Hello there, welcome to Heart Explained Therapy, and I wanted to tell you something that expands your consciousness today, and that is basically a theory that I have based on the knowledge I have on I suppose, the principle that I call the magic of the world, the revelation that is us, and it involves a story about evolution, which is very interesting. I think universally true at this point in time, and it's just an idea about going forward and how much meaning it has maybe for us as a human race and collective consciousness. Now, we evolved into this, I suppose, what we see now as a biological being, and we can see that there's lots of stuff in nature that is very similar to what we do as well. We tend to try our best to flourish and to grow, and we need certain ingredients for this to happen. And we also tend to try and stay away from the stuff that causes us to feel uncomfortable, regardless whether that's consciously a sane option to do. We tend to just automatically do it, which is also what happens in nature. I don't know if you just take a few examples of the stinger and nettles and the brambles that grow around a tree to protect that tree from any sort of contact from anything else. And you see the trees, how they form over the sort of archways of vehicles in small streets where they've adapted to sort of grow and just expand whichever way they can, no matter what obstacle that comes in front of them. And this brought me to a historical sort of, I suppose, idea, which is very interesting. If you expand the idea forwards, it comes to a bizarre, strangely magical possible conclusion of the meaning and purpose of the human race. It is universally agreed upon now that the dinosaur was made extinct, most probably by an impact from a asteroid. This is, I would say, arguable, as in the sense that it's 99% sort of factual based on the evidence and based on the other theories that we have, the counter arguments of this. And what I wanted to see is, let's take this point and say it's true, and let's see what happened at this time, because this is something that is bound to happen again. It has happened many times. In fact, I think it actually formed the universe, all these contacts and pinball sort of planets hitting each other. So it's very important to understand there's a bigger consciousness if we are biologically symbiotic to nature, and the nature is symbiotic to consciousness, and consciousness is symbiotic to reality, that we must understand the history to understand the possible events of the future. Now, quite incredibly, it is registered that about 1 million years before the impact on the planet, there was a massive decline of species on the planet. They started to die off. Now, there's not been any reported scientific real evidence apart from climate and diet changes that support the reason why this would be a massive sort of dying of huge populations of dinosaurs all over the planet. But this was basically previous to the massive impact that killed the planet. And what came after this impact was, further down the line, us. Now let's just pretend that we are sort of incredibly intuitive as a species, which we tend to be. We have this sixth sense, this telepathic synchronicity stuff that happens. This is true, this is factual. We seem to be able to dream dreams that come true, or symbols of the dream seem to make some sort of sense. We also live on a very magical mathematical equation that defies all of the mathematical laws that we know. Now let's just say that back in the day there was a biological intuition that sensed this drastic impact, and they started to cull the species. What was created afterwards was a species that was able to possibly prevent an impact like that ever happening again. Now this sounds really far-fetched and sci-fi and spacey, and something maybe you'd listen to on an episode of the X-Files. But I like to project this theory forwards, because isn't it interesting that at the moment we have guided missiles that can take out large towns at will, and at the moment we use it for political reasons or religious bias reasons, and to sort of show or flex the muscle of strength of a specific republic or nation or state. What I believe that the technology has created for us is the possibility that something that would normally destroy the biological planet as we know it, we have now got the tools to prevent this from happening. We have possibly a guided missile that could take out the asteroid before it even entered our atmosphere. Now why this is important is because it shows that if we are all one substance, if you like, a magical consciousness that we cannot measure or see or understand, it shows that it does exactly what we do, which is put survival of ourselves, our species, at the top priority, and also consciously cleverer than the species, it actually adopts a bigger priority, which is there cannot be a species without the environment. So it puts the environment above itself, taking away the consciousness being everything and all or nothing. And I thought this was a really good idea to understand that maybe at the moment in time in this history, which is today and yesterday, and we see that we use this amazing power that we've managed to produce a nuclear weapon that can take out these large cities and countries at will. And it's not a very nice projection of humanity. It makes me think maybe this is a bigger egotistical defense mechanism to actually do good for the protection of consciousness, to allow consciousness to never eradicate the biological life on this planet. And I suppose you could throw up there as an argument that maybe it also defends us from other stuff that happens, which is on a lower level. But I think that everything is more connected and more magical than we ever can get our minds to really comprehend. So if you look at what I'm saying without expanding your mind, yes, I'm here saying that I believe the biological nature, consciousness at that time, experience in time at that time, was intuitive and understood an impact was about to happen. Not only this, but it started to call the species to lessen or soften the blow, maybe a knee-jerk reaction of attempting to survive, all knowing that this species didn't have the capability to survive. It then produced a species of animal that rose above anything else anywhere in the universe, that had a mind that could create technology, that within that technology we could create the weaponry to actually protect this planet, to survive, for biological life to survive. It sounds completely crazy, but it's a very sort of logical, rational way to look at consciousness when you start to understand the full sense of your capabilities with your mind, the creative imagination that you can use to project history forward and to expand it down to all the avenues that it can go. For me, it shows purpose and meaning for the human race to protect the environment that it thrives on. This is what happens with every cell in your body. This is what happens with disease cells that cause you problems. This is the mechanism that is in all types of matter, arguably even beyond biological form. Lot to take in. Expand your consciousness and just try and imagine these beautiful little stories possibly having some sort of great meaning, and even though we're not using them in the right way now, perhaps one day the nuclear weapon can all be sort of used together, put together from all nations, so we can all survive and stop fighting over ideologies like politics and religion. Just a thought.